From a single idea, a dream kindled around a solitary campfire, Ohio's Buckeye Trail was born. That humble flame has roared into a blazing legacy, a monumental 1,400-mile odyssey weaving around the heart of Ohio. From 26 breathtaking sections, tended by 10 steadfast chapters of dedicated volunteers who build, maintain, preserve, and promote the BT. At the fire's core, Buckeye Trail Association, a fellowship bound by passion, purpose, and the call of Ohio's great outdoors. Welcome to Campfire Chats, presented by the Buckeye Trail Association. Gather close, adventurers, as we share the soul of the Buckeye Trail. Listen to the tales of hikers who conquered its ridges and valleys, runners who've chased its horizons, trail builders who've shaped its destiny, and dreamers who found their home in its embrace. So, claim your place by the fireside. Let the embers glow, the stories rise, and the trails speak. Welcome to the Buckeye Trails Campfire Chats. Now, let's talk trail.
Hi folks, I'm Gatewood-Edwards. I'm here with our first guest of the Buckeye Trail Campfire Chats, actually at a campfire, with Ian Koenig.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah,
it looks like it's spelled like Koenig, so
yeah,
it's Koenig.
It's that German in there. It's technically Koenig, but yeah, it's that German OE that comes out.
Yeah, so we're interviewing Ian today because he has the fastest known time record holder for self-supporting himself on the Buckeye Trail. And he accomplished this last year on September 23rd, 2024. He did this in 35 days, 8 hours, and 46 minutes. And Ian, to start us off with an easy question, what were your thoughts, feelings, and emotions that were going through your mind when you made step, was it 2,988,819 on that fateful day, September 23rd, 2024?
That was a lot of steps. That was it's a fun number to hear out loud. It was really overwhelming. It's interesting hiking for so long because the end just kind of just like runs up on you. So I didn't think about it much until the last like 2 miles or so. But once I finally got there, I'd spent so much time by myself and like there's no one around me like cheering me on while I'm doing it. And then I come around the corner and then my mom and her boyfriend Steve are there. High school friend's mom is there. Tammy Craig was there taking photos. Josh Horsfall, the old FKT record holder, was there. And so I'm just like overwhelmed with like a billion different emotions. People cheering that I haven't heard in forever. And I just remember I kind of had this like tremble that was going on between like exhaustion as well as kind of adrenaline pumping through my body. And everything kind of happened so fast that right when I touched, it was like a huge sense of relief. But then it was immediately swelled with like pride and, kind of even a little bit of sadness that it had finally come to an end, which happens on every through hike when you're finally done because the adventure is so fun.
Yeah.
But I'd say it was definitely an overwhelming experience, but a very proud moment. And to be able to share that with my family and my friends and Tammy and Josh and everyone was like, it was just super cool to finally like get that support from everyone right at the end when I could finally accept it for the first time.
That was awesome.
It was fun.
So where did you complete the trail?
So I finished at Deer Lick Cave, which is right in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And so I had actually passed that exact spot earlier on trail because I started in Massillon at Crystal Springs, slept on the towpath cabin porch my very first night, got dropped off by my sister at like 11 a.m. Or 11 p.m. and did the little loop, which then includes that part of trail.
Yep.
So it was interesting real early on in my hike. That had to be day 5 that I passed it, and just thinking about the fact that I'm like, I'll be back here at some point in time, hopefully a record holder, and hopefully I'm here again. But I stopped there, took some pictures, sent it to my mom and said, hey, when you get here, this is where you should be. So you can park here, you go right here. So to come back to that, 30 days later was cool. But yeah, Deer Lick the trail sign for Deer Lake Cave right in Cuyahoga Valley National Park.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so you're an experienced hiker. This is not your first through hike by any means, right?
No, not my first. not my first. I've only been through hiking since 2023.
Okay.
So I kind of did a lot in a short period of time. But no, definitely not my first rodeo when it comes to living in the woods for a while.
What else have you through hiked?
So I did the Appalachian Trail in 2023. I did that southbound, and then came back home. Thought I was going to work again for a while. Like that was the plan, was I was going to get a job again, and then nothing came. And decided 2 days before a bunch of my friends that I met on the AT were going to go do the PCT to sell my truck and just hop on a flight and head to Southern California to the Mexican border and do the PCT.
Wow.
We did the Tahoe Rim Trail while we were on that as well, which was absolutely beautiful. And then 7 days after finishing that, I started on the Buckeye Trail.
Nice. So where'd your third hike?
Yeah.
With the Pacific Rim Trail.
Yeah.
The Tahoe Rim Trail. That's awesome. So what sparked your drive to set the fastest known time on the Buckeye Trail unsupported?
So it wasn't something that I was planning on doing at all until around the halfway point of the Pacific Crest Trail. We were in the Sierras, and I became well known on trail for just promoting and talking about Ohio all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Everyone I hike with is always from like Colorado or Maine or Southern California and like all these really cool spots, and I'm like, here I am from the Midwest, happy to represent. And, I spit fun facts. And so we came out of the Sierras over Kearsarge Pass, and we were in Bishop, California. And at the hostel, something had come up about Ohio, and I was doing my usual, just like saying stuff. And I brought up the fact that Ohio had the longest circular loop trail in the nation. Talked about the Buckeye Trail. And someone just randomly said, like, I wonder what the FKT for that is. What's the fastest known time? And I looked it up and saw Josh Horsfall's record from 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Saw that it was 38 days. So I did some math, realized it was 38 miles a day. And just from seeing that and realizing, we were doing about 30 miles a day on trail, I was like, I wonder if that's something that I could do. So I started calling friends back home, and I was like, hey, I called my friend Kaz. I was like, do you think you could take like a month off and support me around this trail? And he said, no, absolutely not. he wanted to. He said it'd be fun, but just wasn't going to be possible. So I kept talking about it with, all of my hiking crew, and my real good friend Crafty that I met in the Appalachian Trail. I was talking with him, and he was like, why don't you just do it self-supported?
Yeah.
And I was like, asking him questions about how possible that would be. And he was like, that's what we do out here already. He's like, your skill set is in doing it self-supported and carrying that weight. So he's like, I think you'd be able to do it that way. So ever since that conversation, every night in my tent on the PCT, I downloaded the Far Out guide for the Buckeye Trail and just started planning it and just became obsessed on the whole second part of my hike of the PCT.
So you were already planning it while still completing the PCT.
Yeah. I was like checked out the whole second half of the of the PCT because I was just like had this on my mind, and I knew this would be such a big endeavor. But yeah, that was my kind of intro to even thinking about it. And then the more I was thinking about it, the more I was like, I'm from Ohio. Family's always been from Ohio. We all, me and my cousins and aunts, uncles, dad, we all went to school in Ohio. I've been just around the entire state. I've lived in Columbus. I've lived in Cincinnati. I was like, this would just be a cool story to tell, to be able to go do this trail, but not just do it, while I have the physical ability from finishing the PCT to go for the record. And then the cool part that I became obsessed about was doing it self-supported, because there's no recorded track of anyone doing it self-supported before.
Yeah.
So it opens up this new lane for hikers to come in and be like, hey, if this guy did it self-supported, maybe I could as well.
That's awesome.
And that kind of helps build out the trail. So that was, my drive. It was just, for my family, I think it would be a cool experience. Then also to see, what I would be capable of.
That's awesome. And for viewers that might not know, what does self-supported mean?
Oh, yeah. So I had to learn that as well, because there's 3 tiers to doing an FKT. So there's supported, which means you can have all of the help that you could ever want. You can have a whole team helping you. They'll carry your stuff. They'll set up your tent at night. For example, if anyone had been following Tara Dower's journey on the Appalachian Trail, who she just set the fastest known time around the same time that I did for the Buckeye, she was supported, so she had a team with her, and they did a fantastic job. Self-supported means that you're carrying all of your own gear. You have to resource all of your own food. You have to resource all of your own water. No one is allowed to help you or carry any of your stuff. That even includes having a hiking partner. You're allowed to have a hiking partner on a tent, but they have to start and finish with you, and they have to carry all their stuff as well. So there's no one that can just come in for like a 10-mile gap and like walk with me to give me motivation. So I did basically the whole thing just like completely solo. But that allows me, to go into towns and still get food. That allows me to collect water from, a spigot if someone has it at their house. The third tier is unsupported, which is for something that would be way shorter than this, and that's where you carry everything except water from the very beginning. So all of your food, there's absolutely no help that you can get. So I was allowed to have anything available to the public. So that means walking up to someone's house, asking for water if they had it, using rideshare or Uber, anything, allowed to stay in a hotel, stuff like that. If it's available to the public and wasn't designated specifically for me, I was allowed to utilize that.
Okay, thank you for explaining.
Yeah.
So, did you prepare differently for your fastest known time for the Buckeye Trail versus your Thru-Hikes for the Appalachian Trail or Pacific Crest Trail hikes?
I'd definitely say it was different. Since I was already on the PCT, I didn't technically have a plan for prepping for this, other than the fact that I was already hiking, 2,600 miles. With the AT, I thought that I'd do like some strength training before I started. So I was doing like squats and lunges, get my legs ready. None of which helped whatsoever because none of it was endurance. So I was like, I had these big beefy legs, and I was like, I'm gonna climb up these mountains, and I made it. Starting in the north, the first thing I did was Katahdin. I was like halfway up Katahdin. I thought I was gonna pass out.
Oh my God,
I was like, yeah, none of this that I prepped for is coming to fruition. So I was doing like 8 miles a day to start out on the AT. And then, I came home and I didn't do anything in terms of prep for the PCT for 5 months. And then once I got onto the PCT, my legs were already used to what it felt like to do through hiking and carry a pack for long distances. So I'd started out doing about 20 miles a day with my crew.
Like from
which
8
was
miles to 20 miles?
Yeah, it was a nice little growth period. Now, that all being said, my legs were still destroyed for the first 2 weeks of that hike. I just knew that I was capable of going that far, but my body needed some time catching up. By the time I was getting close to the end of the PCT, I had to go home, I guess, to Virginia for one of my best friend's bachelor parties. So I got behind from my crew. So that was right at the Oregon-Washington border, and I figured that would be a good time to catch up to them to really test what I was capable of now that I had the Buckeye Trail in mind. So I did 40 miles a day for 6 days through southern Washington.
Oh my gosh, because that is not easy terrain.
No, that was some pretty, and those were like some super, that was less sleep than I got when I was doing the Buckeye Trail, where I would just get to camp around 11 at night, wake up at 4 in the morning, and just go from there. But I did it, and I caught back up with them, and I was like, okay, I'm ready, and I know that I can do it, so that's good for me. I was like, hopefully Ohio is a lot more flat than Washington, so that should help a little bit.
Was it?
Other than Southern Ohio, yeah. Southeast Ohio is a whole animal that I was not prepped for. But I did that, and I felt confident. So then, literally to the day, 1 week after I finished the PCT, came back home, and I was just like, I don't want to wait for any muscles to go away or anything like that. I want to keep this going. So I did have a lot more prep for this than the other two trails.
Got it.
Which was nice.
Speaking of Southern Ohio, you had a rough stretch there, right? Yeah,
Southern Ohio is not super kind to me. If anyone remembers from last summer, it was just like a huge drought period, one of the biggest droughts that we had in a long time. And that was not something that I prepped for. That wasn't something that I even knew about when I decided to start. So when I got into Southern Ohio, where resources were just a lot more lacking, because the trail really goes through a lot of towns, so I'm able to stop into, say, a gas station or restaurant, get water, and that way I'm good to go. Not the case in, say, the wilderness loop of the Buckeye Trail down in the southeast, almost in West Virginia. Basically, creek beds, if not full small rivers, were completely dry to the bone. And so I was trying my best. Whenever I'd stop, it would be like at the last remaining bit of water in this creek bed that's green with algae and completely stagnant. And I was like, gosh, I really hope my filter is working today.
Yeah.
And so I'd sit there for as long as I could and drink as much, and I didn't know where water was going to be at next. So I would just try and drink as much as I could. And that led to some pretty severe dehydration throughout that whole period, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. I had a whole nother endeavor down south of being sick, but it was a whole new ball game that I wasn't familiar with in terms of not having access to, the things that I need, because I'm not carrying as much food with me when I'm out there, so I was definitely going into a huge calorie deficit.
Yeah.
But Southern Ohio was definitely dry, and it was hot. It was about 95 degrees for like a solid 10-day stretch. No rain whatsoever. The nights were like 75 degrees. So then, I'd be sweating while I was sleeping in my tent every night, so losing even more water. That was an interesting experience for sure.
So I know this hiking this trail, specifically it being Ohio, was meaningful to you because you used to hike with your father a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hiking is something that you guys did together. So what kind of made it meaningful to you? I think you actually scattered your father's ashes on the trail, right?
Yeah. I took my dad's ashes on every trail I've been on. So Appalachian, PCT, Tahoe, and Buckeye Trail. Our prep hikes when I was growing up were always on the Buckeye Trail. That was always like we'd go out and test our gear, and that would be like our intro hike to then go off on like some other big adventure. And usually it was a section of the Appalachian Trail, so we would always go do, whether it's the Smokies or Shenandoah, we would go do small hikes, maybe like 5 days at a time.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I always bring with me on all of my hikes is a little travel shampoo filled with my father's ashes.
Aww.
And so, the beginning of every trail and end of every trail, so Katahdin and Springer down south on the Appalachian Trail, spread the ashes there. And then anywhere that maybe we had been together at any point in time, spread there. And then if there's anywhere that was just kind of meaningful to me, or I felt him in that moment, I would spread his ashes there. And he was a lifetime traveler. He was working on cruise ships for 10, 15 years, and he had been all over the world. Loved the outdoors, so I knew that this would be something that he'd want for not just me, but for himself as well, to be spread along all of these trails. And the Buckeye Trail in that was super cool because we had a lot of experiences throughout Ohio with me growing up. So all these different places that like I recognized and that we had been to together, and that he had taken me on my very first overnight camping trip on down in Hocking. Being able to like stand there and take a moment after hiking all day as hard and fast as I could to be able to pull back and realize, I'm out here not only for him, but because of him. So spreading those ashes was super impactful on me. And then the other thing that I bring on trail is a rock from the very point that I start at until I get to the end. Because my dad told me when we were on the Appalachian Trail when I was in like 5th grade, he was like, every thru hiker, he said, when you thru hike, you have to grab a rock from the beginning and bring it to the final terminus. So I was like, all right. So when I finally went to go do my Appalachian Trail thru hike, I picked up a rock on top of Katahdin, and then I put it in my backpack and I start walking, and then I start meeting people, and I bring up my funny little rock that I'm carrying, and quickly find out that no one else is carrying a rock. And then quickly find out that no one else had even heard of this tradition of picking up a rock and bringing it to the other terminus. And so I put together that I think my dad, from the time that I was 12 years old, was playing a prank on me to get me to carry a rock 2,000 plus miles, which I still find very, very funny.
Yeah.
So I turned that into something that I do for every single trail.
That's awesome.
So I did that for the PCT. I picked up a rock in Mexico and threw it into Canada when I got there. I did that on the Buckeye Trail. Now, it was interesting for the Buckeye Trail, it being a loop. I actually kept that rock because I was like,
I was going to say,
the rock didn't really go anywhere. So I kept that one. And but I turned it into something a little bit bigger. I was like, we're all carrying something, and it's important for us to carry it and deal with it. On the Appalachian Trail, I was dealing with the grief of losing my father, and then working through that, and then getting to the end of the trail and leaving it there like, hey, I've worked through this. Thank you for, changing me into who I am today. PCT, I was going through, identity crisis of I used to be, went to college, was working in corporate America, and now I live in the woods and no one's paying me to be out here. So learning who I was through that process, and then taking that rock and throwing it into Washington as a nice little reminder. And then the Buckeye Trail, I kept that because instead of leaving something behind, I felt like I kind of gained a lot of confidence in myself as a hiker.
Yeah.
So outside of the fact of it being a loop and leaving the rock in the same place, I decided that I'd hold on to it and keep it as a reminder of, what I accomplished, as well as the confidence that came from a really proud and cool moment.
That's awesome. So, kind of talking about the Buckeye Trail specifically, I think you kind of already touched on this. Buckeye Trail literally is the longest continuous loop trail in the entire country, and it hits pretty much most of the major aspects of Ohio, everywhere from Cleveland to Cincinnati to, Hocking Hills, the Plains areas up north. And, again, you already kind of mentioned this, but how do those places tie to your own roots in Ohio and your own history?
Yeah, it was just super fascinating to go through this as the person that I am today, and then re-experience them in the new light of being a hiker, and going back to, I went to school in Athens, Ohio. So the trail doesn't go directly through Athens, but being in that area again was, super fun for me. And,
Except for the drought.
Except for the drought. The drought was, it was nice to think about my old college memories while I was having severe dehydration. But, walking through Cincinnati, I lived there for a summer. My cousin and his wife are down there now. I actually walked right past their house. Now, they weren't allowed to come out and cheer me on or anything, but, I was, a block away from them. Yeah, I felt them. Like, I gave them a phone call too, or they called me, and so it was nice to be able to talk to them.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the Buckeye Trail, is the fact that it's not its own big thing that's separated from everything else. It's a really different experience to be able to really go through all these areas. You walk straight through downtown Akron.
Yeah.
And, there was actually a parade going on when I walked through downtown Akron. And since I'm being GPS tracked, I'm not able to, go on, a side road or anything. So, I just am, in this parade with my backpack on. And I was like, sorry, I got to be here. So, the Buckeye, it really puts you in the communities that it goes through. And in terms of food and resupplies, that's really nice. But also, just the learning experience of, going down the towpath, and it has all of its signage about the history of the towpath and the Erie Canal. It's just surreal to do this in the area that I grew up in. I've lived in Ohio since I was in 3rd grade, and I've been all over the state. And walking through those areas again, realizing that I'm doing something, important for myself, for my family, for the Buckeye Trail, it was cool. It was really a fun experience.
So, I'm a board member. If you didn't know that. And, I'm familiar with a lot of the work that goes into maintaining our blue blazes and our trail. And how did the trail's condition impact your hike? You can say the good and the bad.
Yeah. I'll keep it honest. The trail was actually, for the most part, in really good condition. I think that there's, sections of, you're doing road walking where it doesn't so much feel like a trail, but those are always usually in pretty good condition. Southern Ohio, definitely, it's kind of not a casual hiker's place at times, where it's not, a well distinguished trail. You're going in between road walking and short passages of trail and even bridle trail. And so it doesn't make do for casual hikers. So people don't get out there all that often.
Yeah.
And, there's definitely times where it felt a little bit overgrown. Granted, I was there towards the end of summer as well. There were times where I was getting, an entire day's hike of thistles and thorns and just completely cut up legs. And, I'd be, cussing, and I'd be like, can't believe it. But, the great thing about doing so many miles in one day is that the sections were never long enough to be substantial. So, the majority of the trail is actually so incredibly well maintained for it being completely done by volunteers. I mean, going through the sections that it's not well maintained makes me realize how much work they're constantly doing to make sure that it stays open. Because there's sections of trail even up north where people aren't getting there that often, but it was still so well maintained for me to just come through. I didn't see another through hiker or section hiker while I was out there, so I know there's people that aren't really going there all that often, and the volunteers still come out every day to make sure that it's in its best place.
That's good to hear. And, we have a great group of folks that volunteer, so I'm glad it's working out.
They were great. And in that southern section where water wasn't super abundant, there were even some caches of water in a little bucket that I was able to go to, which was super nice. I even met one of the trail maintainers, and he was telling me all the work that he's been doing, and super down to earth and just really nice people that I can tell care about this trail. It's not like it's not like just something that they do because for whatever reason. They're actually very passionate and love the fact that the trail is near them. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I know the stat correctly, but it's something like wherever you are in Ohio, you're no further than like an hour and 15 minutes from somewhere on the Buckeye Trail. So the fact that there's that much continuous trail that is getting worked on completely through volunteers is amazing. Let's stoke this fire a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's get
a little break here.
Yeah.
I think I should probably take my sunglasses off. I totally forgot I had those on.
It's sunny out here in North Ridgeville.
Yeah.
It's not often in Ohio that we get to see the sun like this.
I know, especially these last couple weeks.
Yeah.
I'll put on. There we go. Okay. So, you've traversed the entire state at this point. What do you think are some underrated spots on the Buckeye Trail? It could be like a cave, forest, even a farm view. You're like, whoa, I've never seen this before. More people need to know about this. This is amazing.
I'm glad that you said farm view because I think that's incredibly underrated. Even when I was on the Appalachian Trail, when we got into Pennsylvania, that started to feel more like home, and there's a lot of walking through farms in that section. There's two different sides to Ohio when it comes to that farmland. You get the rolling hills of farmland out in Deersville, Bolivar, Senecaville. Those were some of my favorite early morning walks, just because you'd have a nice fog going over all the farmland, but you're still getting these rolling hills and it's not super populated or anything. And then on the other side, on the west, it's some of the flattest terrain in the United States. It's just like completely flat. And that's just so expansive of farms. And out there, I was walking next to a lot of cows early in the morning. I don't know if they thought that I was going to feed them, but whenever I walked past a herd, the whole herd would always walk with me, next to me. And I've got a video somewhere. There were a bunch of goats out on the road. This was actually in southern Ohio, so different. But I was in a herd of goats for a little while.
Are they wild, or they?
No, they must have belonged to someone.
Okay.
I don't know.
Not to sidetrack too much, but one of my hiking friends, they were doing a circuit hike with Richard Morgan.
Okay.
And I think he has the record for the most hikes on the trail.
Wow.
I think he's at 5 or 6 right now. He's doing 2 right now because he leads circuit hikes.
Of full completions of the trail.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So they're on a hike and they see this creature in the distance, and it's coming up to them. We're like, is this a bear? What is this? It was a goat that had obviously escaped someone's farm. It was all matted, and it followed them for quite some time on the trail.
No way.
So yeah.
See, that
is some friends on the trail.
Following animals. It's something that happens. When I was going into Shawnee, 2 dogs, and this happens on trail, especially in southern Ohio, the dogs will kind of come out and protect their land.
Yep.
I was fortunate enough, I didn't have any problems with them. I just kind of kept my head, eyes forward, and they'd be protecting their land, and I'd say, I'm on my way, don't worry about me. These 2 dogs came out, and they were barking at me, and I did the same thing, keeping my eyes forward, tracking poles at my side, and then they started walking. And we were in an area where I just figured they were on a large piece of land, because they knew where they were going, at least for the beginning. And these two dogs eventually like kind of got behind me, and I was 1 mile out from where they were with me, or where they started with me, 2 miles out, 3 miles out, and eventually I realized that I was like, these dogs have no idea where they're going. They're following me at this point.
Oh gosh.
And so I'm on the phone with the sheriff. I'm like, I can tell you where they came from, but I'm not really in a position right now to turn around and go back and like bring them there. So they're like, all right, we'll get someone out to you. Where are you going to be? So I'm telling them, I'm like, I'm moving quick. I'm going to be, up on this road, taking a left. I'll be in the woods for a little bit, and then I'll be out on this road. So long story short, these dogs hiked with me for 17 miles. The best companions I could have ever asked for. Whenever other dogs would come, they would start barking to like protect me while I was walking through. Led them through Shawnee, and then we made it to the Shawnee Lodge before finally someone was able to locate where we were at. Showed them where I picked them up, and they brought them back to their owners. So I have to imagine we're incredibly confused as to why their dog was on a 17-mile hike. But we picked up on that route, like a stray joined us for a little bit. So we had 3 dogs at one point. Then he stopped off at a farm. And but something about animals liking us Buckeye Thru-Hikers. Like, you look like you're doing something kind of fun.
Yeah.
Let's
Come
join
along
in.
for the ride.
Yeah.
Dogs, goats,
cows. Yeah, there were cats, lots of cats.
Nice,
cows. A couple deer. I did see a bobcat in southern Ohio, which was really cool.
Wow.
I thought it was a dog. And then it was like, I was like, no, it looks like a cat. And then I was like, that would be a really big cat.
Yeah.
And it was real early. It had to be like 5:30 in the morning. And it was just crossing the road. Wasn't paying any attention to me. And I was like, I just saw a bobcat in southern Ohio near Athens.
It makes sense.
Go Bobcats.
Yeah, go Bobcats.
So I was like, that was a pretty cool experience.
There.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has their Bobcat.
Rufus was out. Yeah, Rufus was out roaming around.
They're cheering you on.
Yeah. I don't even remember what the original question was that led. Oh, my favorite spot.
Yeah, your favorite spot. You like the farm views. It's like one of those underrated spots.
Yeah,
and any specific spot.
A specific spot. Yeah. And I think a lot of this comes from the fact that I got one of my absolute favorite sunrises on any trail that I've ever been on was in East Fork Lake State Park out in Batavia.
Okay.
I'd just woken up in the morning. I felt great. I was walking, and the trails there are so incredibly well maintained. And you have like bike trails through there as well. And then I saw like the sky through the trees was just like super pink. And so I decided that I would take a little detour to go down to the lake to see what that was all about. And it was just one of the most stunning. I mean, the clouds are just completely orange, pink, this whole hue. And it was just a really awesome moment where I actually like got the chance to like settle down and like take in that moment, because usually it's head down, go.
Yeah.
And so East Fork, great hiking, great biking, beautiful views. If you're anywhere in the Cincinnati area and you can make it out to Batavia, or if you're not, if you can make it to Batavia and go to East Fork, I would 100% recommend it. I posted it on my story. A lot of people said that there's a lot of crew events and rowing events that go on there. My cousin was like, I used to row there all the time. So I think people probably know about it, but I think it needs some respect. It was gorgeous.
I'll have to check that out. I haven't made my way over there yet.
Yeah.
I'm section hiking myself, but it's a lot slower.
Yeah. No, you'll love that section.
Awesome. So, Ohio, we're not really known for our mountains, but the Appalachian Plateau sneaks its way into our state a little bit.
Yep.
What was the toughest climb or stretch that you tackled?
The toughest stretch outside of the Draught, we all know about, was the Wilderness Loop. Because at that point, you're getting into the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. Like I said, you're basically touching West Virginia. And I had a day out there right at 7,500 feet of elevation, which is a big day on any trail that I've done. And I think someone called it in the comments on Far Out. They're like, this is the roller coaster of the Buckeye Trail. And they were right, because it's just, you go straight up for like half mile to a mile, then straight down for half mile to a mile. When you're doing 40 plus miles in a day, those add up real quick. And I have a video somewhere that I don't know if I can show, because I think I'm saying some bad stuff in it. But basically the concept of the video is, I was like, everyone always said Ohio's flat. It's like the whole concept is that Ohio's real flat. And it's just me walking straight up a mountain, and I'm like, awesome. This is just not true.
Yeah.
Never said this line.
How did it compare to the AT I've done some little bit of hiking on the AT, and I remember one is like, oh, this is a 2-mile stretch, we'll be fine, and it was straight up a mountain, and I was like, this is awful.
Yeah,
how does that compare?
That's how the AT is, where there's no such thing as a switchback. They're like, we're going straight to the top, so you're like efficient but exhausting. I was like straight up, straight down. That section of trail was very, very similar.
Very similar. Okay.
To in terms of that straight up, straight down mindset. It was actually, I would say, like if anyone wanted like a true, prep for the Appalachian Trail, and you're in Ohio and you have access to go down into the Wilderness Loop or Wayne National Forest, that was like some of the most authentic through hiking experience that I had.
Okay.
Trails were well maintained, and you're just going straight up, straight down. Very similar to Shawnee.
Yep.
Shawnee has a lot of really good climbs.
That's my next section.
Yeah, there's definitely good climbing.
I'm scared.
In Shawnee. Yeah, but you know what's great? Shawnee is really, really well maintained, and the trails are all super wide.
Awesome.
So you'll have no problems there. But yeah, Shawnee and the Wilderness Loop are 100% like, I don't want to call them mountains, but you're doing elevation.
Yeah.
And then you make it out to the west side of the state, and you're like, this is great.
Yeah.
This is nice.
Smooth sailing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's actually why I chose to go the route that I did, because I wanted to get that part out of the way.
Yeah.
So I stayed behind FKT pace for a really long time, and then even while I was sick, I was already behind. And then I had to take a 0 day, and I did like 2 miles in at Burr Oak Lodge, and I stayed there for the day, and I fell even further behind. And I was like, I really hope that I can make this up on the second half, and luckily I did. But I wanted to do all of that, especially while I still had my legs from the PCT and doing that elevation. I figured it'd be a good time for me to start there.
That's smart.
And go that
Worked
way.
out.
It did. It did work out.
Despite the drought.
Despite the drought. Yeah, the drought, that's why I ended up getting sick, was just severe dehydration. So I'd come out of the Wilderness Loop, started heading south, and resources still weren't super abundant through there. I couldn't really retain any water whatsoever, and I still wasn't even taking in any water. So even when I got the chance, I couldn't really hold on to it all that well. And then I had a night, one of the only nights that I like timed up perfectly with a shelter that I could stay at. And I was like, finally, like, I'll just get a good night's sleep in the shelter. And I was up making bathroom runs the entire night. I mean, it had to be like 10 times throughout the night. I didn't get any sleep. The night before, I was woken up by someone that was not super stoked that I was on. I don't know if it was their property, because I was on some crazy back road somewhere, and I was like, maybe I'll be here. So he woke me up at 2 a.m. I decided to start hiking then. And so I finally made it to a little town. After I woke up the next morning from the shelter, I hiked like 3 miles, and I was nodding out the entire time that I was hiking. Like, I was like, my eyes would start rolling back in my head because I had very little food because I was nauseous and couldn't really eat. Didn't really have any water. So it was the first time in my hiking experience that I was like generally worried about like my own health. You know, walking and fainting is just not an ideal scenario. So I make it to this town after 3 miles called Maxville. There's a little stream that I find behind a community center, and I sit there and I start drinking water, trying, and I called it quits right then and there. I was already behind FKT pace. I knew that I had no calories in my system to like keep going. I knew that I needed the rest if I wanted to, stop being sick.
Yeah.
And I walked 1.5 miles off trail to go to like this. I had no service, so I couldn't call anyone. Wanted to get to this main road that I might be able to hitch to get into Logan, and then from Logan to Columbus. I had a whole plan about how I was gonna get home. Did that for like 1.5 miles, then sat down. It was like, I've worked real hard to get to this point. It was right before the halfway point on trail. And something in me decided to just keep going. I didn't feel confident in me being completely tapped out yet. So I turned around, walked the 1.5 miles back to Maxville, go into this community center that was completely locked. I had tried to see if I could get into it for any reason. And go to the back, and I noticed that this little garage door has an opening. So I opened that. To anyone in Maxville, I'm sorry for breaking into your community center. I went into there, and then there was this latch door that I opened, and it led into a bathroom with a running sink and faucet. And so I sat in there for about 3 hours, just drinking water. I'll try to keep it not TMI, but drinking water, bathroom, drinking water, bathroom for like 3 hours, just cleansing my system and getting water back in. So I drank like 6 liters of water. Decided, you know what, I'm good, I can go now, and then pushed on 23 miles to Lake Logan that night. And I probably drank 6 more liters of water on trail. I didn't pee any of it out because my body was just retaining all of that. And when I got to Lake Logan, I was actually able to have service and DoorDash Subway, and my appetite came back. And then I was also able to DoorDash from Dollar General electrolytes, which I had been desperately needing. I didn't have any access to.
I was going to ask you if you got any on the way.
So I tried to get like the packets, but there was just nowhere. None of the gas stations I was going to were carrying any of those. So every time I go to a gas station, I try to get like 2 electrolyte drinks that I would slam, but I didn't want to carry all that extra weight. So I didn't have access to them. So I got those. I got food. I got a good night's sleep, and from there on, I was real peachy. But it was, I posted about that on Instagram, and I was like, hey, like, it was a real tough day yesterday. Mentally, I quit. I thought I was going to get off. And then my uncle, Kurt, who is my dad's student, my dad was a professor. He was my dad's student 30 years ago. And we have just called him Uncle Kurt ever since, good family friend of ours. I actually want to find it. I think I took a screenshot. He sent me a quote from one of my dad's lessons that he had written down 30 years ago. And it said, which mountain climber is more interesting? The one who crawls back down and starts over, or the one who nearly falls off the edge of the cliff but rescues himself and keeps on climbing? And he has that like highlighted and circled. And he was just like, I just feel like this is something that your dad would have said to you. And it was cool to get a lesson that my dad taught someone 30 years ago to like full circle bring it back to me when I needed to hear something like that. And from there, I just, it turned into, I knew physically I'd gone through it all. It just turned into the mental game at that point. But that was a real turnaround in my hike was that moment.
That's awesome. That's really special right there.
It was fun. It was, I texted him afterwards, and I was like, when I finished, and I was like, hey man, just so you know, you like saved my hike with that message right there.
Yeah.
And so it was cool.
It's really neat.
Yeah.
So speaking of, social media, electrolytes, gear in general, tech is a big part of hiking now. So you used it a little bit, and we were talking about our Garmin's right before this. Can you maybe go into like what tech you used on your hike, and like what you kind of chose not to use, if you chose not to use some tech? Yeah, the biggest piece of tech, and I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me about doing the Buckeye Trail weather section or full throughs, which one is awesome. And anyone, if you ever want to reach out to me, please do. I'm so happy to talk about it. I need to talk about it. It's just buried inside of me and it needs to come out. We want more people on the trail too.
Yes, please. Yes. But a lot of people weren't familiar with Far Out, which is the app that you can download that works without cell service. And the Buckeye Trail actually has an entire red line trail on Far Out. That was my main piece of tech, just to make sure I was always on trail, helped with my planning. Actually, a big shout out, like a week ago, the Buckeye Trail just got a whole revamp on Far Out. We did. So now it shows where water sources are, which would have been awesome. It shows where restaurants or food and resupplies are. I think there's a bunch of other things, but that was my main way of knowing, one, where I was, and two, where I'm going to be. So I always recommend anyone to use Far Out. And then I guess my headlamp, that was a big piece. I was doing a lot of night hiking, so I brought a headlamp, and then music as well. Okay. I was listening to a lot of music on trail, kind of on and off, but if I just needed to really zone out, I just throw on a playlist and go from there. And that was, so I had my wired earphones, which are hard to find these days. They are, They are, but I was like, I don't want to waste battery with Bluetooth. Yeah. So I got my wired earbuds, and they're super lightweight, and I just keep them in my fanny pack. Whenever I want to listen to music, I just pop those in. And that was super helpful as well, just because you also start going a little bit crazy when you're by yourself for that long. Imagine. So I was like, being able to hear someone else's voice is really nice. So I'd say, my phone and my headlamp. Okay. And my battery. I had a battery bank that I carried two, actually. which is not ultralight by any means. But I didn't want to worry about ever running out of battery while I was on trail, so I brought 2, and that's how I charged my phone every night, my headlamp if it needed it.
You track your steps with your
Oh yeah, and then my Garmin. This Garmin I use to track everything. I also carried my InReach just in case anything were to go wrong.
Okay.
I had like an SOS device if I didn't have any service. But the Garmin was huge because I had to track everything about where I was to make sure I was on trail.
Mm-hmm.
And then for fastest known time, you have to submit all of your logs from all of your hikes. So like if this died, I had to wait. I couldn't just move without it because otherwise the attempt wouldn't count. So another reason why I brought the 2 battery packs. But having a watch that had the ability to track as well as have battery for as long as it did was massive. Yeah, so that's most of the gear, or most of the tech. I think all of it. Yeah.
So pretty light, but
Pretty light, yeah. I was debating on bringing the InReach, but then I found myself in scenarios on other trails where I was just glad to have it because there was a good chance something could go wrong.
it's one of those situations like where you bring it,
Yeah.
you don't need to use it, and then when you don't bring it, you're gonna have to use it.
I was just having that conversation with someone that's looking to do the Buckeye Trail where, he was like, should I bring this? Like, should I spend the money? Because they're not cheap.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's one of those things that you buy once, cry once, and then you have it on you, and you hope to God that you never have to use it.
Can we maybe explain like what the InReach is?
Yeah. So the Garmin InReach, which you don't need any Garmin devices to have, is basically just an SOS device that you can press one button on it, and then you'll get access to any sort of help that's immediately nearby. So they have your geolocation and they can tell where you are. So for something like when I was sick in Southeast Ohio and didn't have any service, I had considered if something were to happen, I knew that I had my InReach, so someone would be able to find me even if I don't have service. So I was a big proponent of just always have it. You're always safer with it. There's no downside to bringing one other than the little bit of weight. They're only like, yay big. So yeah, having that. Actually, before I did the AT, I wasn't going to bring one.
Wow.
And then my mother, God bless her, she's like, you're not doing this if you don't. So she helped me buy one, and she's like, you're going to carry this. And, you can send messages no matter if you have service or not to people, and they can see your location from where you sent. So I'd send my mom and my sister and a few people in my family a nightly, like, hey, this is where I'm at. And they appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it because then I can get messages too.
Yeah.
My sister would always send me something funny every so often.
That's awesome.
And so that was,
Nice motivator.
yeah, that was nice.
Yeah. So, this is a funny question. So, for those that don't know, my great-great-grandmother is Grandma Gatewood, first woman to solo thru-hike the Appalachian Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And she's kind of that pioneer of the ultralight backpacking movement. Folks that don't know, she's known for hiking the Appalachian Trail in Keds high-top tennis shoes. She went through, I think, about she hiked it 3 times. So I think the first time she went through 5 pairs of it, to the point that there are museums along the trail and different places actually have her shoes as museum displays that
And
she
she wore them out.
Yeah, they had holes in them and everything. And she didn't have a tent. She had a shower curtain that she would just throw over a picnic table and sleep under the picnic table. Had an old army duffel bag that she would carry her stuff in. Just a stick. No trekking gloves. I don't think they had those at the time. So what would you think of her reaction to all this gear that we now use?
Oh, man.
I'm guilty of using, not really guilty, but I use this gear too.
Yeah, there's a reason that there's museums with her stuff in it, and there's a reason why she is so famous. I was actually, before this, watching a few documentaries about her as well, just because I just wanted to relive all of that.
Yeah.
And, what amazes me is that I've met so many people, especially on the Appalachian Trail, that talk about when they were hiking back in the 70s. And they're talking about their big canvas bags. They're like, we were carrying 70 pounds and we had canned food. And I think she was probably carrying less weight than what I was carrying on this hike now in 2024, 2025.
Yeah.
So obviously it's very possible without. You got to be a real tough cookie like she was. I think she would find it all quite amusing. You know, hopefully she would see the benefits in it and seeing how it's helping people get out on trail.
It's a safety thing, right?
Yeah, it's a safety thing. But obviously she did it without, and not only that, but she crushed it and did the AT 3 times without any of that. So, no. Grandma Gatewood, thank you for all that you did in inventing the ultralight game, because I tried my best to get there. Even if I do bring a pillow instead of sleeping on my clothes as my luxury item. You know.
It's okay.
Yeah, and then I've actually looked into getting a Gatewood cape.
Yeah.
I've thought about it. My buddy and I talked about it on the Appalachian Trail, and you know, maybe I'm just too soft, but I was like, my tent is really nice. I really
How
like.
much weight is it?
See, it's 2 pounds.
Oh, okay.
But so it's still light, but I'm pretty sure the Gatewood cape is like a pound.
Yeah.
Like, it's as light, and then who knows, hers is probably less than that, just being a shower curtain.
It's just a shower curtain.
So-
Because why would they have this, like, I've seen those, okay, just to go over, like, what a Gatewood cape is.
Mhm.
You want to explain it? I'll
So
let you
the best way I can describe it is, it's called a Gatewood cape because she hiked with a shower curtain. And so essentially that's exactly what it is, but now just a little bit more built out.
And they charge way too much for it.
They charge a lot. I don't know what it is, but it's a lot more expensive than a shower curtain. But it's basically, it's not a tent on the inside. You don't have a bivvy. It's just a tarp that gets held up with a trekking pole. And, or you could roll into it like a cocoon if you wanted, but it also doubles as a rain jacket as well. So you can wear it basically as a poncho, which is what she was using the shower curtain for as well. Super lightweight, way too expensive. Grab a shower curtain and you'll be fine. Do you know how she slept in, like, was she more often than not just sleeping on the ground without the curtain on?
Yeah.
And if she needed it, did she just like burrito roll?
I think so, yeah. The picnic table or just like rolling up in it. She also was known for, if it was like kind of cold or damp out, she'd have a fire and she'd heat up stones and then she would kind of lay on the heated stones. It's kind of like insulation.
See, now people are using their jet boils to warm up their thermos to put in the bottom of their sleeping bag.
Yeah,
She was doing it the
Yeah.
OG way.
Yeah. I mean, also, you know, this is a different time. So she did have a lot of trail magic.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, I think a lot of farmers were willing. They've seen this old woman walking by herself. They're like, hey, come in and stay with us, get a shower, have a hot meal.
That's nice.
She did experience quite a bit of trail magic on her way. So that also helped it. But that obviously wasn't every night.
Because she was 67
Correct,
the
yes.
first time?
Yep.
Yeah. Good on those people letting her come in to stay.
Yeah.
That was one thing that was awesome on the Buckeye Trail. So with it not being as well known, there were times where I'd be hiking on the Buckeye Trail, like on a road, and I'd meet people outside and they thought I was just like some homeless guy or whatever.
I've heard that, yeah.
And, you know, I got holes in all my clothes and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm hiking the Buckeye Trail. And they'd go like, oh, I've heard that's around here. Like, where's it at?
Like right
And I'm like, you live on it. You know?
That's happened to me too. We're like, can I park here? And they're like, sure. Are you doing the hike in the Buckeye Trail? What's that? I'm like, you literally have a blaze on your tree.
Yeah, I was like, see that blue blaze on the telephone pole in front of your house? They're like, oh, I thought that was like a marker for utilities or something. But since you're going past all these people, and even people that don't know what the Buckeye Trail is, I had a few experiences with people letting me stay. So I would like, you know, I'd go up and ask for a spigot, which was a real awkward scenario when I first did it. Then the thirstier I got, the more I was like
no, just
slamming on doors, like, please, can I use your spigot? But they'd ask what I was doing, I'd tell them, and they'd say, hey, come in for the night, I'll cook you dinner, you can stay in bed. And like, Ohio people are like the nicest people ever, and that's sort of trail magic, because I never asked anyone to stay in their house.
Yeah,
that was never a goal of mine.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would try to avoid it just for, you know, because I want to make sure that I'm getting my miles in.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not trying to like impose on anyone, but the amount of people that offered me to come in, and then there was actually a family, or a husband and wife that I met, the Petermans, is Steve and Pamela, who, it had just started to rain. I had like 2 miles left to go, at least what I was planning to do. And they brought me in and they were like, hey, you're staying with us tonight. We got a cabin out back. I was like, that's fantastic. I stay there. And it was the one night that I stayed up till like 1 a.m. talking with these people about Ohio, about faith, about our vices, just about life in general. And they were just amazingly kind to me. They made me a salad. fresh from their garden, which was like the best salad I've ever had in my life. They were like clearing out their fridge to give me food. They gave me vegetables for the road. And then I just received a message a couple days ago from Pamela. Steve had been battling cancer, and he had just passed away just a few days ago, maybe a week ago now. And I always think about, you know, like Grandma Gatewood, who had people that brought her in, how fortunate and thankful she was, just because we have these experiences with these people that are so short.
Yeah.
The experience with trail angels is usually very, very short, and just have such a profound experience, you know, with you, and you leave with that, and just, you know, there's a saying that says, if you want to restore your faith in humanity, to go on a Thru-Hike, just because of the amount of kindness that you receive. And so, Steve, I do miss you, and I hope wherever you are, everything's going well. And Pamela, I'm going to reach out to you as well. But yeah, God bless the people that took care of Grandma Gatewood.
Yeah.
Because trail angels are magical people, and even if they don't know that they're trail angels, like stuff on the Buckeye Trail, they're out there, and they want to be, and they want to help, and so that's amazing.
Love our trail angels.
Love our trail angels. And it was interesting because I wasn't allowed to receive any help from trail angels.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how what the role is. For trail
so when I finally posted, because I didn't post at all to anyone from the BTA that I was doing my Thru-Hike, and that was mostly because it was self-supported. That I didn't know how it was going to go, so I was like, I'll keep this to myself. Once I got around the halfway point, I stayed at another gentleman's house who let me in for the night, who was affiliated with some people from BTA. He's like, you should post about this and let people know that you're doing it. So I was like, okay, so I posted, and all of these trail angels, you know, I made it very clear. I was like, I can't receive help. And that was a big reason why I did, because I was like, I didn't want people to start bringing me stuff and then me have to be like, hey, thank you so much.
It's hard to be like, wow, these people are trying to be so kind and help me.
And then I have to turn them away.
No, this is a requirement.
And so then everyone started reaching out, and getting that support just through messages was awesome. But then I had so many people that are like, so what if I decide to just be a trail angel for the day, and I know where you're at, and I just leave some food by this tree right here? And I was like, well, you shouldn't have told me. Because now I was like, I can't get any help from like anyone specifically for me.
So you were able to get help from the Petersons because you just happened across. They found you. They didn't know that you were doing this.
Exactly. Okay. So like if someone knew that I was out there, and then they like came and found me and was like, hey, come, like, and we know you're doing the trail, come stay with me. So it's anything that's available to the public, which I was public to these people. And regardless of my stink, they were like, come into our house, take a shower, we'll do your laundry. No, that was more of a requirement than it was an ask. And but even after I reached out and I made it clear, I was like, you know, none of you guys are like able to help me. I still received so much help just from, because at that halfway point, you're like, it's, you know, it's either going to happen or it's not.
Yeah, because that was like right where you kind of got over that hump where you were like, okay, am I really going to keep going?
Yeah, and that's where I was still behind the fastest known time pace. So getting those messages from people, I was really glad I reached out to the BTA, because getting that support, you know, I have hundreds of people that I've never met that are like cheering me on. I was like, this is
when I saw your post, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, we were all rooting for you. We were pretty excited.
Everyone was super stoked. There were people in that group. I didn't even join the Facebook group or anything. And then there were people that I knew personally that were in that Facebook group that were like reaching out to me. They're like, this is so cool. And that was my high school friend's mom, Mrs. Walker. She came to the finish, and she was in that group, and so she was shooting me messages, and then she showed up at the end, and that was a fun experience. But people that don't know they're trail angels end up being some of the best, because you know, they're not in it for anything other than
they're just in it for the kindness of their hearts. They're just good people.
They just wanted to help.
So, you know, people hike for the peace of mind now more than ever. And what did the Buckeye Trail teach you about yourself for handling stress? So I know you mentioned that, you know, your different hikes have meant different things for you, and you kind of touched on this before, but
the Buckeye Trail was cool because it was different than anything I'd done before. all my hikes before were for pleasure or leisure. Not to say there's anything leisurely about doing any of those hikes, but I wasn't up against a clock or anything.
Yeah.
You know, if I wanted to go spend 2 days in town and gorge on food, I could. If I wanted to do a 10-mile day and rest, or siesta in the middle of the day at a nice view, I could. The Buckeye Trail, going for the record and being against the clock, was stress like I had never imagined before. And there's something to be said about just not being able to stop. Like when I was sick and I took that day off, there was nothing relaxing about it. I was stressed the entire time.
Like I'm falling behind here.
Yeah, I was like, I'm already behind, now I'm falling behind even more. But the awesome thing about it, and about any of my hikes, but mostly on this one, was that everything is so simple. Everything is my goal is to wake up, walk, and then go to bed. And everything becomes focused on food and shelter and water. And that's it. And then you're focusing maybe even on like the pain that you're experiencing. It's like, put your eyes on your feet, one step at a time, and just like keep going. So while it was stressful on one hand, it was the most simple my life had absolutely ever been, because there's just one goal. It's the only thing that I'm aiming towards doing. But, you know, it gets to the point where, like, if you want to sit down and eat, you're counting the seconds that you're, like, sitting down, taking a break to eat food. If you can eat while walking, you do that. If I have the choice between sitting down at a restaurant in town or going to a gas station and getting not great food, I go with the gas station because it's going to save me 20 to 30 minutes on my day.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it becomes stressful, but then you get into this kind of zen state of simplicity. And then it's hard coming off trail after that, because life starts to seem a little bit more complex. But then you take with you, you're like, okay, am I healthy? Am I alive? You know, am I doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing? And as long as those three things are true, then everything ends up working out all right. And a lot of the things that seemed so important to me beforehand, you know, especially after the Buckeye Trail, kind of became a lot less complex in my mind. That first couple weeks off trail is weird because everything is so fast.
Yeah.
Everything seems like it's moving so fast. Being alone for 35 days and only focusing on one thing, you come back, you're surrounded by people. Everyone's got 50 million things going on. You're just like, whoa, can we slow down a little bit? And so that's what I love about being out, you know, on any trail, is just the ability to simplify everything and get down into your roots about what's important to me. You know, am I healthy right now? Is everything going to be all right? So there's definitely something to be said for anyone. If you just never need any sort of break, giving yourself the goal of whether it's a day, whether it's half a day, whether it's 5 days, say, this is my goal for this period of time and I want to get lost for a little while, I wouldn't be able to recommend it enough.
Do you feel like, since you've done like 3 Thru-Hikes, do you feel like there's a different type of adjustment after each one, or?
Yeah, the first one with me planning to be done and it being my first Thru-Hike, I came back like stoked. I was like telling everyone about it. I was like, this was such an awesome experience.
Yeah.
So that one wasn't as hard. And then finishing the PCT, I just jumped straight to the Buckeye Trail.
So there was no readjustment back into society.
Yeah, I didn't.
Back into the wilderness.
Yeah, I was home for 2 days because it took me a couple days to get home. We did like a kayaking trip down the Columbia River when we finished the PCT.
That's sweet.
Yeah, we missed a few miles because of fires, and so we walked into Canada, hitchhiked like 4 hours between 2 rides into Canada back to the States, walked back over the border at like a border crossing, got checked and everything, and then we were like, we're near the Columbia River, let's make up some miles and do like a 3-day trip.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then I was home for 2 days and then immediately went to the Buckeye. But finishing the Buckeye after being gone for so long on the PCT and then being completely by myself for 35 days, that was a hard adjustment period coming back. It still kind of is, just because everything was so quiet. And my family took me my second day after being home. We went to Texas de Brazil, big steakhouse. I was pumped up to eat a ton of steak. But while we were in there, it being like the server comes to you with food, and there's like a bunch of tables.
Steak,
with a big old knife.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of, there was a lot of excess in my mind that I was like super overwhelmed.
Wow.
And, you know, I kind of got quiet for a little bit, and then we ended up going home. But that was my first real experience with, like, I've been living so differently for so long that it can be a little weird for me now in these, like, big public settings. But that tends to go away over time, and it has, you know, since then.
And then you kind of, if you need a moment of zen or just peace, you can kind of think back.
Pull back from, you know, how that experience felt. And then you always have the hope of starting the next trail.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of what you want to do next?
I do. I would love to do the Continental Divide Trail.
So you're going to be a Triple Crown?
I'm hoping to be.
Okay.
I'm hoping to be. That would be June of next year if we get the opportunity. And then I've been in talks with my buddy Crafty about potentially doing a calendar year Triple Crown. Shout out to Horsepower, who is an awesome guy who randomly ran into me on trail on his way home, talked to me for like 10 minutes, but he's done the calendar year Triple Crown. And that just seems like, the extent of how isolated can I get from society. For an extended period of time. That one I would do with my buddy because I don't think I could spend that much time alone.
That'd be a lot.
But yeah, I've still got hikes that I'm planning on, and even outside of, you know, PCT, AT, and CDT. You know, I want to go maybe do the Arizona Trail while I'm in Florida. Maybe do the Florida Trail. I'm right there. I don't have a real desire to do it.
It seems kind of swampy. I'm
yeah,
not
a little swampy and a little hot. But I do have the weird desire of like potentially maybe doing all of the National Scenic Trails.
That would be really cool. And speaking of National Scenic Trails, you've heard of the feasibility study, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So the folks that don't know, the Buckeye Trail is undergoing a feasibility study to become the next National Scenic Trail. So this would put us in the ranks with the AT, the PCT, the CDT, the Florida Trail, the Arizona Trail. So this would be a huge undertaking. This would be huge for the Buckeye Trail. So, in thinking of this, what sets the Buckeye Trail apart? Like, what is the benefit of making the Buckeye Trail the next National Scenic Trail?
Yeah, I went to one of their talks that they were giving in Cuyahoga Valley National Park Service. They were all super kind, and you know, the big thing that they look for, the main like aspect of National Scenic Trail is to display America's beauty. That's like what they say. That's like why we have these trails and why they want to keep them maintained. And the awesome thing about the Buckeye Trail, also the North Country Trail shares, I think, 900 miles with the Buckeye Trail, and that's already a National Scenic Trail. But I kind of said it earlier, the Buckeye Trail being so immersed in the history of Ohio, which eventually leads to the history of the expansion west and kind of the history of the entire United States, with the Erie Canal leading to a huge engineering boom, and it being an engineering feat itself. Being so immersed in that is a really amazing experience where, you know, other trails are really their own thing.
Yeah.
The Buckeye Trail has so much history behind it, going through all the towns of Ohio, that it's really beautiful in its own way that almost separates it from a lot of the other trails that are as far out there as you can get. This is, you know, your opportunity to immerse yourself in the history of not just Ohio, but the United States as well. And, you know, being able to get that experience, I know there's a bunch of history buffs out there. There is so many historical landmarks that you go through, and you're going past Serpent Mound, you're going down the towpath, and they do signage for all of these historical places. And then there's, Fort Laramie has the Wilderness Museum. I got to speak to Jim Rosengarten when I was going by, and, you know, that's a huge bit of history there that they have preserved. But there's all the signage that explains everything that you're going through. And so I think that it's a really cool experience and trail to be able to see all of that.
You know, the national status could also bring us more resources. And like, where do you think the Buckeye Trail needs the most improvement?
Yeah, I would say that it's just simply the fact that the Buckeye Trail runs off of complete volunteers. It's hard to just find. It's the 8th or 9th longest trail in the U.S., all in Ohio, and that is in 1,444 miles is a long distance to continually upkeep, as I'm sure you're very well aware. That's a lot of trail. It's not a small endeavor. So being able to get more hands on the places that might not see as much traffic from hikers, like we talked about in Southern Ohio, just to make sure it's one full, clean experience. I know that also allows resources to be able to work with the community in terms of purchasing, certain swaths of land, whether it's, forest that the Buckeye Trail might then be able to get off of a road, or building a trail next to a road. I think it's a really good opportunity to get the resources that make the trail whole and complete. And it's there in spirit. It's just the resources aren't completely there yet. So getting that, is it ready to be a National Scenic Trail? I would say that it's there based on the community, but getting, everything finalized would really set it into that, next standard and next level of trail.
So we mentioned that the Buckeye Trail is a diverse trail. It's not just all through the woods like other trails. Like, it has a combination of the towpath, bike paths, actual wooded trails, off roads. What was your favorite? What was your favorite type of hike?
So I'm definitely a trail hiker for sure. That just feels the most natural to me. Road walking, I thought was going to be a blast because it's just flat and it's open.
Should be easy, right?
I was like, this should be sweet.
Yeah.
And then you're walking on concrete or asphalt.
95-degree weather. It probably didn't help. It's probably okay in the winter.
And so, doing that amount of road walking was not something I was prepped for.
Yeah.
Hurt a lot more than I expected it to. I'd say that the bridle trails are awesome if they're not muddy.
I was gonna say, I have mixed feelings about the
bridle trails because then people ride and it's not their fault. But if it's muddy and then people ride through and then it hardens, then it's all rolly. Your ankles are like, please get me off of this. But when they're nice and it's nice and wide, the ATV trails are the same way. Those are fun to walk on. But I was the most stoked whenever I'd get to an actual section of trail. But the cool thing about going through all of those different experiences is that it gives you something to look forward to in terms of it doesn't get monotonous.
Yeah.
You're never stuck in the green tunnel or you're never stuck on a road. It's like, okay, I've got 15 miles of trail. Let's knock this out. And then it's like, okay, what's next? Instead of just focusing on, I've got 1,000 miles left of trail. You're like, okay, I can do this 15, and then I've got a 5-mile section of roads, and after that, I've got a 10-mile section of ATV. And you can kind of piece out your day that way, and it does change often. I mean, I don't think I ever had one day where I was ever just on trail. Maybe the wilderness loop, that might be the case that you're in trail, which is great. I was glad to be, if any of them for an entire day. Actual wooded trail is nice, but you get to go through all of these in one day, and that's also great for your feet and your ankles and your legs to be able to get different terrain to walk on. I appreciated it.
So we talked about the volunteer efforts of the Buckeye Trail. Like, we are pretty much 99% volunteers, and that's a huge undertaking to maintain the longest continuous loop trail in the entire country. To keep that alive. What is one memory of the trail that really made you appreciate those volunteers' efforts?
I mean, the big one where I was the most grateful was the water caches in the wilderness loop. I was not expecting that. They even put out along the trail the trail logs, and that's super cool to be able to write your name in, see who else is there. And I saw people's names that were out there. We just never met up at any point. And so that's cool because that's something that they do on, Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail as well. And that builds up that sense of community. I'd say that I got a huge appreciation for the volunteers, which I might have said this, but them going through the sections that were unkept made me realize how hard it is to do the work that they do. And I think while I was on the PCT, there was a huge storm sometime early summer last year that came through Ohio that knocked down like tons and tons and tons of trees. There was only one section just south of Bell Valley that I had even had to do like any sort of tree hopping. People were through there cutting everything down. Even if like everything had kind of grown over it, you know, people were out there with chainsaws cutting trees out of the way.
We got a pretty good team of sawyers.
yeah, that was amazing. And so you know, on the other trails where the help is so expansive, it kind of gets lost on you, you know, how much they're doing. And that's not to say that they're not appreciated, because God knows we appreciate them a ton, especially with the fires out west. The amount of work they do is incredible. But, you know, I got a first eye view of, you know, how much work they're actually, you know, doing. And that's just the volunteers. The actual Buckeye Trail Association, you know, like we are part of, is amazing with the amount of work that they do and the marketing they do, the support that they give is incredible. I didn't have a chance to stop at headquarters. I did walk into, what town is it in?
Shawnee.
Shawnee.
Which is different from the Shawnee side.
Yes.
I learned that the hard way.
I did as well.
I remember I put in my GPS, I'm going to go to Shawnee, the headquarters, and I'm like, wait, this is like McConnellsville. This is nowhere near Shawnee.
So I walked in and I had to stop for food, but it was like the middle of my day, and they weren't, the office wasn't open for a while.
Yeah.
So I was like, I couldn't stop in and say hi, so I had to bounce. But I wanted to, just because of the amount of, you know, help that they'd given me.
Yeah.
I just love how passionate everyone is. It's not a side thing. It's what they care about and what they want to spend their time doing.
It's an awesome group of people.
Yeah.
So how can trails like the Buckeye Trail become more welcoming to new hikers or folks who don't see themselves as outdoorsy? Like, you're a very experienced hiker, you know, you grew up with your dad, you know, hiking the AT, even, you know, in 5th grade and everything. But for folks that are just getting their feet wet or are thinking about adopting this outdoorsy lifestyle, what do you think, how do you think the Buckeye Trail can do that?
Yeah, I think how we talked about it goes through just a little south of Cleveland, goes through Akron, goes through Cincinnati, like Eden Park. It goes through, and Dayton, you're right outside Dayton. It goes through all these areas that are easily accessible. And so the fact that the Buckeye Trail has Hocking Hills on it as well, the fact that there's all these state parks that it goes through, I think, you know, people want to go to these places, but they're not familiar with the fact that there is this trail that, you know, is an amazing, amazing trail and 1,400 miles long. You know, they might see, like we talked about, they might see a blue blaze and just not even understand what it's for. And so I just love the fact that, you know, people honestly probably use the Buckeye Trail more than they think.
Exactly. That's what I talk to folks. They've never heard of the Buckeye Trail. And I asked him, you've been to Old Man's Cave, right? You've been to Hocking Hills. Like, oh, yeah, all the time. Like, you've been on the Buckeye Trail.
Yeah.
You've been to Caesar's Creek. You've been on the Buckeye Trail. So.
Yeah, and I walked through Paynesville and Menor up on, like, the, you know, Menor Headlands. And I'm walking through, you know, these downtown streets and sidewalks, and, like, Chardon is the same way. It's just you know, I think people just aren't fully aware of the fact that they have the opportunity to go, whether they want to section hike it. Yeah. You know, it's out there. And I think the Buckeye Trail is already that accessible. It just needs the notoriety to get there. Yeah.
Hi folks, be sure to check out the Buckeye Trail's upcoming summer events. To stay informed about all our exciting events, work parties, hikes, be sure to visit our events page on our website at buckeyetrail.org. Additionally, you can explore our local events with your chapters by checking out our Eventbrite links provided in our description. On July 25th and 27th, that is our Buckeye Trail Association Summer Mushroom Camp. So it's located at the Buckeye Trail Association Beal Farmstead on Tappan Lake. And you can join us for a weekend of fungi-filled fun at the BTA Summer Mushroom Camp. So whether you're a seasoned forager or you're just curious about mushrooms, it's going to be a relaxed and educational weekend and a great way to connect with nature, learn new skills, and enjoy company. So it's going to include some foraging hikes, kayaking, a Saturday potluck dinner, so you can just bring a dish to share and make some new friends and join some old ones. Again, this will be on our Eventbrite site for the details. And then finally, September 5th through 7th will be our 2025 Buckeye Trail Fest. It'll be our 12th annual, and it's scheduled at Maumee Bay State Park on the shore of Lake Erie. So think of this as the convention of the Buckeye Trail Association. It's a great time to get together with all your other Buckeye Trail enthusiasts, meet each other, explore a new part of the state. It does rotate to different parts of the state this year, so we're really excited to see what's in store for us at Maumee Bay. So thank you, Ian, so much for being our inaugural interviewee.
Yeah, wow.
This was great. Learned so much about your experience, and wow, that was quite an experience.
Yeah.
And really appreciate you just being such a great advocate for the Buckeye Trail.
Absolutely. Well, you guys do all the hard work. I just walk around in the woods, so I appreciate you so much.
So do you have any final thoughts, final words for the folks watching?
Other than just get out there and explore Ohio. It's beautiful, and there's so much that you have, to learn and experience, and you don't have to go far away to experience, some of the most beautiful nature in America. You actually have it right here in your own backyard. And then I also wanted to say that we are filming this at my sister's house that was once formerly my dad's house, and him and I built this fireplace together. And the fact that you're here as Grandma Gatewood's great-great-granddaughter, and she was a huge inspiration to him and to me growing up to go do parts of the AT, would just absolutely put him over the moon to know that you're here right now and that we're doing this conversation. So I appreciate you so much, and I'm so glad that the whole crew is able to come up here and be here with us. So.
Thank you so much, Ian, for being our inaugural interviewee. Really enjoy learning your story here. And a tradition that we want to start here is having all of our interviewees sign our blaze.
Oh, wow.
So we will have you sign this. And then we would also love to have you sign this tumbler from All Star Creations that they created. And then this will be part of the prize package for this month.
Oh, wow.
And this will be in the next prize. Okay, last of this.
Wow.
You want me to restart that?
So one lucky person's gonna get this tumbler with my signature on it?
Yeah.
Wow. I will try my best to make the signature look good.
Gotta put your fastest in time on there too.
Yeah, wow.
Ian Koenig.
Oh my gosh. So should I sign it right now?
Yeah.
Does it matter where? Just anywhere on there?
Yep, wherever you want.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
Got a lot of space there.
Yeah, I know. World's my oyster. I'll do it right next to the blaze right here.
Nice.
I put my trail name on there too.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, what is your trail name?
My trail name is Rooster.
Rooster, how'd you get that?
That's what they call me. On the Appalachian Trail, where it's bright at 4:30 in the morning in June, struggle sleeping when the sun is out. So 4:30 in the morning, I would be up bright and early, and then it became my responsibility to get everyone else out of their tent that early in the morning. So they started calling me the Rooster.
Love it. That's awesome.
Oh, this is fun.
Ian the Rooster.
This is in Sharpie too, so
It's permanent.
yeah, no mistakes.
It's permanent. You gonna draw a rooster?
I have on a signature before, but with this being the only chance that I get, I don't really want to mess that one up.
That's fair.
All right,
Yeah.
how's that look on there?
Love it.
This is really cool, guys. Wow. And then the tumbler as
Then
well?
the tumbler, yeah.
I'm sorry for whoever has to look at my signature when they're taking a sip
No, it'll
of
be
tea.
inspirational. It'll be like, wow, this is the chalice of champions here. Fastest known time.
Yeah, say wake up every morning and say I'm gonna hike 40 miles today.
Says Rooster waking me up with some coffee.
Yeah, just sticking true to my roots. I didn't do an actual signature, so I hope that's okay.
That's fine.
Put a little note on here. I'm going to say, the mountains are calling,
And I must go.
and I must go.
John Muir, right?
Mm-hmm. And see, you know, the mountains are calling. The mountains in Ohio. There you go.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you guys. Thank you. I appreciate it so much, and you guys as well. Sweet.
No, thank you. You made it easy. Shawn made it easy too, and Edwina.
Yeah, you guys. Oh, the director notes were going on back there too. That was nice.